Hello, fifth graders, Ms. Jagodnik here, and try not to cry when I tell you this. This will be our final math video we'll be doing together this school year. We are going to focus on dividing today. This is a review of lesson 6-5 in your book, which was pages 325 to 330. Again, those pages are already filled up. You've already done it in class, but if you want to look back at them and recall what we did in class, that's fine. Or the online pages are also in your assignments, so you can look at them that way if you'd like. But these problems up here are just some problems we're going to be doing together. Long division is something that takes some practice, and continued practice is always good because it's something you're going to be using over and over and over again in the coming years. So today we're going to take a minute to review dividing with our long division algorithm using two-digit numbers, which is always a little bit trickier because you're off your times tables and you have to do some calculation. And we're also going to throw in decimals like we did this year. So if you take a look at the problems behind me, you can see that we're using a decimal as a dividend. This number being divided up includes a decimal point. The outside number, the divisor in these examples, do not. That is a different lesson, and it adds another step to the algorithm. That's not what we're reviewing today. We're just reviewing long division, where there is a decimal in the dividend. So the long division process is the same. The only added twist is making sure that you put the decimal point in the right place, which means that it's extra important for us to check that our answer when we get it is reasonable. So if you can look up here, you see in this first problem, I have included an estimate. And this is even more important than it would be in other problems. It's always a good idea, but here I really want to make sure that my answer is reasonable because it's going to include a decimal point. So I turned my 94 into 90 because when we're dividing, we want to use compatible numbers. If I just rounded this off to a whole number like 95, I still wouldn't be able to divide evenly with 15, so that's not real helpful. But if I turn it into 90, I know 2 15s is 30. So another 2 15s is 60 and another 2 15s is 90, which means that 90 divided by 15 is about 6. So when I get my answer, I can check and see if it's close to 6. If it's far away, I want to go back and check my division or possibly where I put my decimal point. So let's start going through the steps. I put up here a reminder for our long division steps. First you divide, then you multiply, then you subtract, and then you bring down. And of course, this is a cycle that we do over and over again until we've gotten ourselves the quotient. So let's recall and go through the steps with this problem. Remembering that our answer, to be reasonable, should be somewhere around 6. So I'm going to start. Obviously, I can't do 9 divided by 15. I've got a two-digit number over here. I'm going to do 94 divided by 15. So I already kind of did that when I was estimating. The closest I can get is 90. So when I'm dividing, I'm thinking 94 divided by 15, okay, that's going to give me about 6 because 6 times 15 is 90. That's as close as I can get. So now I've done the multiplication part. 6 times 15 is 90. Okay. So if I take out 6 groups of 15 or divide my 94 into groups of 15, I can make 6 groups. That takes up 90 of my 94. So my next step is to subtract and see how many I have left. My answer is 4. Okay. Then I bring down the next digit, the 5. So now I have 45. 45, back up to the top in my steps, 45 divided by 15 is 3. Because 2 15s is 30, another 15 would be 45. So now I multiply 3 times 15. That uses up all 45. When I subtract, I get 0. Now there's nothing else to bring down. There's no other digits. And I do not have a remainder. So my work here is done except to place the decimal point. And if you remember how we did that, the decimal point goes in the same place in the quotient as it did in the dividend. I'm just going to bring it right up. You could even do this at the beginning if you want. Okay. I was dividing the 10s and the 1s when I came up with 6, and I was dividing the 10ths when I came up with 3. And if I use my estimate to check, that makes perfect sense. If I had the decimal point in the wrong place and I thought the answer was 0.63 or 63, then I would have to think again when I see that my estimate said it should be about 6. So 6.3 is what makes sense. Okay, next, let's try this one here. I have 91.2 divided by 16. Let me estimate first. In fact, I think I'll use the same estimate here because I could make that 91, but 90 is easier. 16 is close to 15. So again, my answer should be somewhere around 6. So when I do my division first, I have to think 91 divided by 16. Well, here's where I'm going to have to do a little more calculation. 16 is not as easy to work with as 15. So I'm going to have to try some things out. Okay, let's see. It took me 6 15s to get to 94. So 16's a little bigger and 91's a little smaller. So let me try by starting with 5. 6 times 5 is 30. 5 plus 3 is 8. Okay, so 5 16s is 80. Another 16 would be 96. It would be too big. So this seems like what I want to go with. So I'm going to put a 5 up here. 5 times 16 is 80. And that means I have 11 left over when I subtract. So I've divided, I got 5. Multiplied the 5 times 16, I got 80 used up. Subtract, that means I still have 11 to go. Now I need to bring down the next digit, which is a 2. Ooh, 112. That is a big one. Okay. Now it's got to be bigger than 5. I said another 16 would give me 96, so that's not quite big enough. So let me try 16 times 7. I may or may not be right. I may have to move around here, but let's see. 6 times 7 is 42. 7 plus 4 is, oh, look at how that worked out. 11, so that gives me 112. So I'm going to put my 7 up here as my division. 7 times 16 is 112. When I subtract it, I have nothing left. And again, I have no other digit to bring down. I have no remainder. This is my answer. I just need to make sure I put the decimal point in the right place and then check it with my estimate. I said my quotient should be about 6, 5.7. If I rounded that off, it would be 6. So it's very close, definitely reasonable. Okay, we're going to go over one more example together, and then you should be ready to try some on your own. This one doesn't have a decimal in the dividend. It's actually a whole number, 144 divided by 45. Here's why I included this one, because this is one that I might have to put a decimal in and use these steps that way. Because I know that 144 is not going to divide evenly by 45 because I can see the ending is a 4. It's not a multiple of 45 because then it would end in a 5 or a 0. So I may need to put in my own decimal and annex some zeros in order to work this out. And I wanted to make sure we reviewed that way as well. So when I start, okay, let me start by estimating. Okay. What is the closest thing? Well, I could make that 150. I could say 150 divided by about 50. My answer should be somewhere around 3. Okay. Let's see how that works for us. 144 divided by 45. My first step is division. Because I can't do 14, I'm going to have to use all 3 digits. 144 divided by 45. Okay. Well, since I said my answer should be about 3, that might be a good place to start. Let me try 45 times 3. Okay. 3 times 5 is 15. That's 12 plus 1 more is 13. Oh, good. I can do 135. That works out fine. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is put my 3 up here. 45 times 3 is 135. Okay. When I do that subtraction, then I'm going to come out with 9 left over. I cannot do 9 divided by 45. Okay. So now back in 4th grade, we would have talked about that as a remainder. We would have talked about how to interpret it. Do I use it as a fraction? What do I do with it? Now we know in our 5th grade lessons, we don't leave a remainder because now that we can work with decimals, we can continue this number, this dividend, by putting a decimal point and annexing zeros, because I know I can annex as many zeros as I want behind the decimal point without changing the value of the number. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put a decimal point right here behind my ones place and right there in my quotient, because that's where the decimal point would be. And now I can put a 0 here. That is 0/10, because 144 is a whole number. 144 and 0/10 is exactly the same thing. It's just written with another digit, so that now I can do this step and bring something down. This was 9 ones. Now it's 90/10. That is the same value, because if I did 90/10, that equals 9 whole ones. So 90 divided by 45 I can do. 2 45s is 90. So that takes care of the rest of my remainder. I have nothing left. I have no more digits to bring down. Although if I needed to, if I had a remainder still, I could continue to bring down zeros after the decimal point until I finished off my division. But since I've used up all 90 and I have no remainder, now I'm done. I can stop at the 10ths place. So my answer then is 3 2/10. Which makes sense with my estimate. I said my answer should be about 3. So it seems like I put the decimal point in the right place and I got a reasonable answer. Okay, so that's a review of our steps of division, long division algorithm. If there's a decimal in the dividend, then you continue to divide the same way. Remember our steps. Divide, then multiply to see how much you've used up, subtract it from what you had, and bring down the next digit. When you run out of digits and you're down at 0 as a remainder, then your answer is done and you should estimate to check that your answer is reasonable. However, if you run out of digits and there's still a remainder left over, remember that you can continue to annex zeros. If you started with a decimal, if I needed more digits here, I could keep annexing zeros until I came out with a 0 as a remainder. Even if you start with a whole number and you still have a remainder left over, you can't leave it as a remainder, you can put in a decimal point and continue to annex zeros to bring things down until you can use up your entire number and get a final quotient. Remember to estimate and check. Okay. And again, you can look back at lesson 6.5 if you need more of a review. You can look at the visual learning video if you'd like. And you can move on to your practice buddy and practice some more of these on your own. Again, this is our last math video together. So I hope you enjoy your last week and a half of school. I hope you enjoy your graduation. And I hope these videos really helped you get through this remote learning time with some extra practice and knowledge of math. Have a wonderful summer and good luck in middle school.